Assalamu alaikum everyone, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our latest series, latest installment on our panel series. Inshallah, today we will discuss a new topic. It is something that is getting more and more relevant for everyone, interestingly, in 2020. Of course, it was always in our lives, death, but it is indeed taken a prominent place in everybody's life, either
There's a
through.
problem with the sound.
Oh, can you not hear me?
No, you're talking over yourself.
Oh, this is weird.
I can hear.
Yeah, I heard everything here.
Okay. Colin Hocam, would you like to check your speakers some? Or I can start, don't know.
Sorry, it might have been my problem. I could sound everything. I heard everything. Yeah, yeah, it's fine.
Okay, sorry for the trouble. But inshallah, so the death is a topic is getting closer to home for everyone in 2020 practically, as I was talking about it. And indeed, with the pandemic, I guess it is hard to find anyone who hasn't lost any loved one, either a relative or a friend or someone close, a neighbor, someone like that in the past few months. Indeed, it is becoming normal, but of course, it is nothing normal for anyone. And understanding it, right? Because we people can either go into denial that its nature or death exists in our lives, or we can embrace its true nature. Of course, without understanding what it is, what it means to Muslims and for humanity, it is hard to come to an agreement or come um, at a peace with the concept of death. So, inshallah, this will be inshallah our last session of 2020. And we will have in the next 2 weeks we'll give a break to the seminar series, this series, but in that sense, inshallah, this will be probably a meaningful end to the 2020 series for this webinar series that we have been having. So inshallah, as I mentioned, the topic is death and what is the wisdom behind the creation of death, and if it is really a blessing, a bounty, and if so, how we can understand that to be a blessing. Inshallah, our speakers today are Professor Colin Turner from UK and Brother Fatih Atalay from New Jersey, and inshallah, I'll try to moderate the session. Okay, so in terms of the text from the Risale Inner Collection, from the letters, we are going to be discussing the first letter. And there's a question. The second question in the first letter is about death. So inshallah, I'll read through roughly half of it. And inshallah, we can start talking about it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Question. Verses like the following in the all-wise Quran, the criterion of truth and falsehood. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. Who creates death and life that he may try you. Which of you is the best in conduct? This is the ayah from Surah Mulk. Make it understood that death is created like life. It too is a bounty. Who creates death and life? So death is created like life. It too is a bounty. Whereas, apparently, death is dissolution, non-existence, decay, the extinction of life, the annihilator of pleasures. How can it be created and a bounty? Again, whereas apparently death is dissolution, non-existence, decay, the extinction of life, the annihilator of pleasures, and annihilator of pleasures in Arabic is hadimul ladhat, which also is mentioned in a hadith with regards to death. How can it be created and a bounty? And I'll read the first part of the answer as well, and then inshallah we can start discussing. The answer, death, is a discharge from the duties of life. It is a rest, a change of residence, a change of existence. It is an invitation to an eternal life, a beginning, the introduction to an immortal life. Just as life comes into the world through an act of creation and a determining, so too departure from the world is through a creation and determining, through a wise, through through a wise direction. I guess there was like a small typo. For the death of plant life, the simplest level of life, for the death of plant life, the simplest level of life, shows that it is a more orderly work of art than life. For although the death of fruits, seeds, and grains appear to occur through decay and dissolution, their death is in fact a kneading, which comprises an exceedingly well-ordered chemical reaction and well-balanced combining of elements and wise formation of particles. This unseen, orderly, and wise death appears through the life of the new shoots. That is to say, the death of the seed is the start of life of the shoot. Indeed, since it is like life itself, this death is created and well ordered as much as is life. Moreover, the death of the fruits of living beings and animals in the human stomach is the beginning of their rising to the level of a human life. It may therefore be said such a death is more orderly and created than their own life. Thus, if the death of plant life, the lowest level of life, is thus created, wise, and ordered, so also must be the death that befalls human life, the most elevated level of life. And like a seed sown in the ground becomes a tree in the world of the air, so a man who is laid in the earth will surely produce the shoots of an everlasting life in the intermediate realm. Okay, so inshallah, I'll stop here, go back to the beginning, and inshallah, um, we'll turn the microphone to our speakers. Maybe Brother Fatih, we can start with you. How should we understand this question and the beginning of the response?
First of all, I want to mention something about the ayah.
Sure.
My understanding is understanding the true meaning of death and life is an important part of our trial in this world. That's why it is mentioned after right after he mentions he is the one who created death and life, so that whoever is doing good, whoever has the best conduct in this world. So understanding life, the true meaning of life and death is very important in terms of our being tried on this world. And here there are like 2 points to this question. The first is death is a creation as much as life is, and our perception of death is usually absence of life. When life goes away and there is death, it's something created. And the second part is you didn't read that part yet, but it's about how death is a bounty and blessing for us.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. Like when we talk about darkness, it is the absence of light. And so we don't consider darkness as a being or as a created thing, like light is. But in the case of death, also it can be observed as lack of life or absence of life. What you're saying and what this is saying, based on what you're saying, Fatah, is that it is not like that. It is not really just an absence of life. It is something bigger, something created. Do I
Yeah,
understand
and
correctly?
yeah, and like Nursi gives, Ustad gives a couple of examples here. For example, discharging from duties. Like think about a soldier who is in military service, and then someone who doesn't know anything about military service, if she or he observes this discharging event, I mean, he's gonna see that they're taking away everything from him, like the guns, clothes, etc., all the equipment he has, and he may see it as a bad thing happening, but in reality, like he's done with his military service, and most probably he's very happy that he's going back to his family and friends, and um, and also it's a beginning of a new life for him. That's one of the examples he gives here.
Yeah.
And also another thing is discharging in like military requires as much planning as recruiting, because like you don't want too many soldiers and you don't want less soldiers, so it needs planning as much as recruiting does. So like that is like that. It is created with the plan of Allah, as much as like coming into this world and being given life is created by Allah.
Thank you. Yeah, great points indeed. Dr. Turner, Konobi, would you like to also comment on the question and also some of these things that we have been discussing? I hope you can hear us better now. Oh, I guess okay.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Bismillah. I think we need to contextualize death, first of all. In secular society, death is the last taboo, really. Death anxiety is possibly the most pervasive human trait there is, and it's because of this that we prefer to sweep death under the carpet, where it belongs, according to the secular mindset. We refer to it with sanitized expressions and euphemisms, such as passing on. Death is perceived to be the very end of human experience, the extinction of life, as it says in the text, and the bringer of destruction and decay. So instead of seeing it as a common experience that is waiting for all of us, and which is to be properly understood and internalized, what the secular mindset does, it veils it in black and tries not to think of it. But in reality, as Ustad says, death is created along with life. And in fact, it's very interesting that in the verse, death is mentioned before life, to show that death is created as part of life, and there's nothing at all to be afraid of or worried about. So Ustad Nursi reminds us of this Quranic verse, which posits death and life as part of the divine test. We are beings who are hardwired to desire immortality. It's in our DNA to want immortality. And in actual fact, our original source is the Gardens of Eden, paradise, where we enjoyed an existence with the Creator in a boundless, eternal realm. And our creation on earth consisted in God moving us from one realm to another. So that was a kind of death and birth, moving from one realm to another, from an eternal realm to this transient realm, one that's limited and finite. And this movement, you know, this transition is very important because without it, we are unable to understand that we are creatures designed for eternity. So it's all tied up together. Now, an example that I usually use is that of a fish. A fish lives in water, and without water, it dies. But the fish has no idea that this is the case until you take it out of the water. You know, then it begins to flounder about, struggling for breath. It realizes for the very first time in its life that it is not where it was before. It realizes that it's outside of the water. And it's only that realization that it's outside of the water that it can actually know what water is and what it means to live in it. So, similarly, we can appreciate immortality only by experiencing this mortal life. And so, our creation in this limited realm, in this finite realm, is so that we can experience limitation and finitude, neither of which exists in paradise. And we can only know what eternity and immortality are if we are confronted by the opposite. So we have to be in a place where we are limited and where we are mortal. So Allah creates us on earth in order that we should taste death. Just as the fish was taken out of the river to taste life outside water, just so that it can understand what water is. So we experience limitation, finitude, transience, and then death in order to be able to conceptualize unlimitedness, infinity, eternality, and ultimately everlasting life. We can't experience these things without first coming to this world and then dying. That is the purpose behind our creation, actually. We are tested, as Ustad says, with mortality in order to be able to understand immortality, which is in actual fact our default setting. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is great. I mean, because it almost like what I understand from what you're saying is that although, you know, death by itself is not the end, that understanding or that illusion by human beings is a way for us to appreciate the value of immortality, because without a concept like death or the illusion of an ending, we would not really be appreciating the like the concept of immortality. Do I understand that correctly? Like with the water and fish example, and death and human being is a immortal, with a immortal spirit.
Yeah, you've understood it as it is. Without death, we wouldn't understand immortality at all.
Mhm.
And it's portrayed as something loathsome because it's not understood correctly. You know, if the reality of death were understood as you've just said, no one would be scared or apprehensive about dying.
Yeah.
If it were understood properly. But of course, there's a reason that death needs to be depicted as something to avoid, because if we were truly aware of how necessary and how beautiful death is, what would stop us from ending our lives? You know, one of the reasons that suicide is forbidden, and with a threat of eternal punishment for those who take that route, is precisely that. It's to prevent people from taking their lives and their deaths into their own hands.
Yeah, great point there. Indeed. Thank you. There is now the example of a plant and their simplest, you know, level of life, and you know, and it's a beautiful example. It's a long one, but it is a beautiful example of a simplest level of life, and I think probably probably is can be connected back to the wisdom that we see in the world and everything. And the example of the plant, you know, to summarize, is that it goes under the earth, but just to give shoots, the seed goes under the earth, goes through these reactions like we do as human beings, go under the earth after death. But like there is these shoots that are coming out, and then there's a death. So how should we understand this example, and how this like from a plant connection to the human being. How should we understand that in the whole, you know, bigger picture in the universe and universal laws and what we see? Brother Fatih, would you like to take a shot at that first, in this example?
Yeah. If you wanna, for example, if you want to save the seeds forever, then it also means that you won't have any new plants or crops. So planting them under soil seems to be letting them decay and dissolve into soil, but at the same time, it is start of the life of the new plant. So even the life of plants ending by like seed dissolving in the soil is start of a new life, then human being dying and then going under soil, we know for sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not let it happen. So there should be a bigger thing behind that decay, like the seed decaying and then becoming a new plant. Hopefully, if we understand our purpose in this life and act accordingly, we will grow like a new plant in the hereafter.
Yeah. So in the sense that, like, I guess in the Risale-i Nur we see this a lot too in other places, like comparing human beings to other beings. Like, I guess, does it require us to understand some of the Asma-i Husna, some of the, beautiful names of Allah, in order to understand like this universality of some of these facts? Like, is it because, like, for someone, like, okay, for plants this is the case, but like, people can think of like, like, I didn't see a tree growing out of a grave, right? Like, is it like, how should we like, because it requires some sort of a contemplation, I guess, to be able to make that connection. What is the connection that we can make? Is it like the manifestation of certain names of Allah around these, or things
Yeah,
like
for
that?
sure. I mean, the 10th word about the hereafter is like maybe 50 pages, all about this, like how manifestations of names in this world requires a hereafter. So whatever we do here won't be meaningless.
I see. So, yeah, that's a good point. Like, I guess this is also a connection to the concept of hereafter, and
For example, like,
yeah.
for example, one of the names is Al-Hafiz, one who protects everything, like the plant's life and all its DNA is stored in the seed, and that seed protects that information and plan for the next plant. So when we put it in the ground, there comes a new plant with that information that was put in during the life of the previous plant. So everything we do is recorded, and we know it for sure that, like, we have a small example of this, that recordings in our brain. So even a creator who doesn't even lose the information on that seed and then uses it to create new plants, of course, is gonna use all our deeds in this world to recreate us in the hereafter and give us a new eternal life. That's one of the examples from 10th word, but there are other names which require that our deeds in this world will be judged in the hereafter, and we will have an eternal life accordingly.
Yeah, indeed. A great example, Jazakallah khair. Thank you. I mean, just the name Hafiz, I guess, is really like when it comes to seeds, protecting and preserving all that information, and that comparison, right? And we have also, I guess, human beings have DNAs and things that also point to the fact that everything is preserved in our end, our memories and things. So indeed, that's a great example of how a universal law of preservation should also play out in the human realm. Thank you. Kon Hocam, like in the sense of this example, but also there's a question from one of the audiences. I mean, comment/question. I'll also say that so that you can comment both on this plant versus human being example, but also there is this question. I'll mention that, and then you can address both or either. So the question is that could we say that death and life are just different angles to see the truth? And the audience gives the example of like such as an arrow coming in from one angle and an arrow going out from another angle. So is it like, I guess, continue saying that in this sense we are already both dead and alive? That part I don't understand. Maybe you might wanna open it up, but there is that question, so question/comment again, but also this example of plants and human beings, and I guess the universal truth that this points to. Would you like to comment on
The question? The question is interesting. Excuse me. Are they two different perspectives on the same thing? And I think yes, they are. Ustad interestingly begins the discussion by focusing on death as an act of creation. Death is not a state, it's a process, much like any other biological process. And I'll get to the tree example in a minute, because that's a good example of it. This process is created, and whatever is created is innately good. So the notion of death as something evil is rejected from the outset. So we can put that away, we can park it and put it away. Death is not the absence of life. It's not a lack or a privation. Entrance into the world happens through creation, and departure from it is exactly the same. It happens through another act of creation. So it's exiting and departing. It's coming and going. It's arriving and departing. That's all it is. So Ustad also reassures us about the wise purposes behind death by showing us that death is actually just as harmonious and orderly as life is. He actually says that death is actually more harmonious and orderly. But I think these two processes are the same, obviously, for the creator. One is no more difficult for him than the other. But apparently, however, and on a purely causal level, death does appear to be somewhat more involved and sophisticated a process than life, superficially, I hasten to add. And he gives an example of the plant seed, which has to die in order for the shoot to emerge. So we're getting to the tree example here. The new life, which is, as you said, in the DNA, it's enshrined and encoded in the seed, the DNA of the plant, that can only emerge if the hard shell around it decays and dies. So a human being also carries the seed of eternal life inside him or her, and it's only by the death of the outer shell that those shoots of eternal life, which are deep inside the human shell, can emerge. and he, I think, was that the question answered? I think that's the question answered.
Yeah.
Again, Ustad, with the tree example, there are two issues to the tree example. The first is that we know that Ustad uses comparisons and analogies to put his point across. And he establishes that the transformation of plant life into animal life is one that's well measured and harmoniously affected. He talks about, and this is really enigmatic for me, something which has always mesmerized me, and yet it's troubled me at the same time. Before I get to the actual tree example, a human being functions as a kind of incubator for the elevation of plant and animal life to the level of humanity. You know, the cells in our body are constantly being renewed as part of the continuous creation of the human form. And the fuel that drives this process is food. Am I discussing the right section? Because there is a section in this text.
Yeah, I just opened it up.
Right. There's
moreover,
a section
the death of fruits.
Shall I let you get there first before
No, we read through it once.
You did, right.
Yes.
So the fuel that drives that process is food, which enters the human stomach, and it's broken down by various acids and fluids so that the nutrients can be released through the various bodily systems. And I'm reminded by the famous lines from Rumi, when he says, I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and became an animal. I died as an animal and became humankind. And when I die as humankind, who knows what else I shall become? When have I ever become less through dying? So this is a stunningly beautiful poem, particularly in the original Persian. And if anyone knows more about the issue of what can only be described as a kind of interspecies ascension, I would appreciate it if they could explain. You know, we're created from earth because the food that we eat grows in the earth. Plants grow in the earth and take minerals from the earth. Minerals enter the plant system and they become plant life. Plants are eaten by animals and they become animal life. Animals are eaten by us and they become human. Now, this is life, death, life, death, life, death. It's interconnected, and it's a program of ascension. The mineral ascends to the level of the vegetable. The vegetable ascends to the level of the animal. The animal ascends to the level of human. Animals are eaten by us and they become human. What is involved in these transactions? You know, they're profoundly symbolic, but what do they represent? It would be good to actually discuss this more at some point. These transformations are life, death, life, death, life, death transactions, and they are in order to elevate. And so death for us is so that we can be elevated from this life when we are put into the ground and metaphorically eaten by the ground. Our shell will break, just as the nutrients and the plants and the animals in our stomach are broken down by the acids, and they become part of our system. When we are put in the ground, our shell will open and our new shoot will come out, and it will give blossoms and flowers in the world of the hereafter. So these things are ascensions, you know, like Mi'raj. For each of these tabaqat, each of these levels of existence, there is an ascension, and that ascension is only possible with death. I'm sorry, I went on for quite a long time.
This is great, and
it's quite exciting, actually. It's a very he mentions this a couple of times in Risalah about the elevation. I don't want to say evolution because it's not evolution, it's ascension. You know, it's moving up from one level of existence to another, and he mentions it a few times, and it is so interesting and fascinating.
And I guess just to be clear, it's not like a reincarnation type of a thing, right?
No, not at all. No, nothing to do with reincarnation. It's moving up through the ranks, like you move up, like a soldier moves up through the ranks in the army. You know, first he's a private, then he's a corporal, then he's a sergeant, then he's a sergeant major. He's not being reincarnated. He's moving up through the ranks.
Maybe Brother Fatih, if you'd like to also comment on this transformation.
Yeah, just to add to Brother Colin's point, in 30th word, Ustad also talks about these as it's a training for those particles and elements for them to be ready for their work in the hereafter. Because there's a hadith which says everything in paradise will be alive, even like trees and stones, everything.
Yeah.
So
Mashallah.
it's they are learning about, it's as if they are learning about life, those particles and elements and atoms, whatever, they are learning about life through those transformations.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Amazing.
Indeed, like it is a different way of like seeing this. Like sometimes people can also, you know, like eating like meat and stuff like that, people can feel like we are killing animals and things like. But thinking of this actually makes one feel better.
So next time you eat your Iskandar or your doner, you know, you are giving an animal an opportunity to become human, in a sense.
Correct. Yeah. It kind of, you know, makes one feel at peace when you know.
But
Eating.
we're
But
also told, you know, there is one of the Sahaba who said, you shouldn't make your stomach a graveyard for animals. So we have to be moderate in all things.
of course, yes. Yeah, moderation, I guess, is the key, right? And the
Yeah.
Sirat Mustaqim, I guess, refraining from extremes in that sense, that we are, you know, we are not going all the way just to avoid not everything and anything, but at the same time we are not going in the extreme of devouring everything at the same time.
Yeah.
So that I guess balance is the key in everything about Islam.
And using that sustenance and energy in a good way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wasting that. I guess should we understand like there is that animal went through its whole life, that plant went through its whole life, and then to become to raise, to ascend to human level. But if we spend that energy or that value in things that are not fruitful, then we are actually wasting that. And those animals
Yeah.
can in turn is it fair to say that they can actually complain about us in the hereafter? This human ate me but didn't do anything good with it. Should we?
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, why not?
You know, you mentioned about the tree before. You know, Ostad uses comparisons and analogies all the time to put his point across. And, you know, he's established that the transformation of plant life into animal life is very well measured, very harmoniously affected. Now, if that is the case with plant life, he says, you know, how much more so will the transformation of humans be, you know, when it's our turn to move on? So you asked, is it a valid way of, you know, talking about things to compare us with trees, for example?
Yeah.
But it absolutely is, and he does that all the time. He talks about how a seed that you sow in the ground becomes a tree in what he calls the world of the air. Now, if you consider the analogy, see how beautiful it is. The tree has got roots in the ground and the soil, and it sends forth its vast, huge shoot, which is the tree trunk, into the air where it sprouts branches, flowers, blossoms, and fruits. So the world of the air is the trees hereafter. That is the place where it produces its fruits. And the fruits are the outcomes of the tree's prayers. It's qawli and fa'li dua, you know. You can see by the branches, which are like arms outstretched, you know, praying. So the branches are also like a reflection of the roots. Similarly, we are rooted in earth as human beings. Our feet are like the roots of a tree. And when we pray, we stretch our hands out to the heavens. And if you look at your fingers, you will see that they also look like your toes, in exactly the same way that a tree's branches resemble its roots. And like the tree, we are also stretched between the heavens and the earth, you know. We are a barzakh between the heavens and the earth, with our origins in the soil, in materiality, and our future is in the heavens, in spirituality. And where you end up will depend partly on the kind of fruit that you produce, the kind of seed that you sow. So the tree is a perfect representation of human life cycle and death, the life cycle and death. And Ustad Nursi knows this. He loved trees. He called trees. He called them by names. He called one tree his auntie. He made a house in a tree. So trees for him are very important, and he uses everything to analogize and to make us understand. And that is why these things are there. You know, trees are there for us to take these lessons from. We live in a symbolic world, and Said Nursi understood this better than anyone.
Yeah, and should we also say that this is one of the methods of the Quran as well in the examples and the things that we see there, right? Like,
Precisely. Yes. Do you not look at this? Do you not look at that? Do you not look at the other? And Said Nursi mirrors this, you know, and he makes a tree into a theology lesson.
yes.
Who else does this? I don't know anyone else who does this. I haven't come across anyone who does this to this extent, at this level of eloquence and clarity and cohesion, you know, mirroring the Quran perfectly.
Great. Should I go through the second part, which is the how death is a bounty and a blessing?
You're the boss.
All right. I mean, if anything else you wanted to add here, you can. Otherwise, I'll read through that, and then, inshallah, you know, we'll probably have a chance for remarks for another 10 minutes for those. Okay, I'll go ahead here. Okay, Bismillah. As for the aspects of death that are bounties, we shall point out 4 of them. The first, it is a great bounty because it is to be freed from the duties and obligations of life, which become burdensome, and is a door through which to join and be united with the 99 out of 100 of one's friends who are already in the intermediate realm. The second, it is a release from the narrow, irksome, turbulent, and agitated prison of this world, and manifesting an expansive, joyful, trouble-free, immortal life. It is to enter the sphere of mercy of the eternally beloved one. The third, there are numerous factors like old age, which make the conditions of life arduous and show death to be a bounty far superior to life. For example, if together with your very elderly parents who cause you much distress were now in front of you your grandfathers' grandfathers in all their pitiful state, you would understand what a calamity is life and what a bounty death. Also, for example, it is understood how difficult are the lives in the conditions of winter of the beautiful flying insects, the lovers of the beautiful flowers, and what mercy are their deaths. The fourth, just as sleep is a comfort, a mercy, a rest, particularly for those afflicted by disaster and the wounded and the sick, so too is death, the elder brother of sleep, a pure bounty and mercy for those struck by disaster and suffering tribulations which drive them to suicide. However, as is proved, and it's a big however, I think, however, as is proved decisively in many of the words, for the people of misguidance, death is pure torment like life, and pure affliction, but it is outside the discussion here. So, shall comments on these 4 aspects, but also I think if you would like to touch upon um, the how death takes its shape when it comes to, you know, when it's not reflected upon a believer's heart, probably is worth mentioning as well. So I'll leave the floor open, so either to discuss these aspects and also how these might not be really applicable if you do not really have belief. Brother Fatih, would you like to lead us there?
Yeah, when someone is seriously ill, some people pray for, oh Allah, bestow him or her 1 or 2 mercies. There's a prayer like that people make, which means that either like give him recovery, healing, or end his suffering through death. And another thing we usually say in Turkish is like rahmetli oldu. Like he went to the mercy of God, means something like that. So it's a mercy for some of those people who are seriously ill or like very, very old and then cannot take any more treatment because of their weak bodies. I mean, it's I think the second part, death being a bounty and mercy is, I think it's understood more easily than the first part of this this question and answer.
Yeah. See. And it's not only human beings, looks like, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
is also for the flying insects and after the third, I guess. Looks like it is also.
Yeah, even animals, for example, slaughtering, they call it cruel and thing. But think about it. I mean, if that animal is not slaughtered, which takes like a couple of seconds or less than a minute to die, and if that animal suffers and dies through an illness, it's gonna take weeks or sometimes years. So when you think about that, even that's a mercy for them, for the animals.
Yeah, correct.
And everybody is gonna die. Every living thing is gonna die. So
I guess probably like when we connect to again Ismail Husna, and if we I guess connecting also to the very end, believing in a all merciful creator, I guess we should also then internalize maybe that how we, I mean, I guess what you're saying, like everything is going to die. It's not like if we are going to die, it is like how we are going to die. And looks like it is in the most merciful way that it is possible. That's what I am getting out of your comments. Is that correct?
yeah.
Yeah, great. Colin Hocam, would you like to add to that? But also, I guess if we come to the, how this is connected to belief, and really like how that doesn't really, I mean, all these, I guess, consolation, all these bounties isn't really helpful if you don't really have belief. Can we, is that a fair thing to say here? And also any of your comments about like the death being a bounty and a blessing.
Clearly, if death is a release after a long illness or after some calamity which leaves someone incapacitated and unable to function, then death, of course, it's a mercy, it's a bounty, and it's to be welcomed. But obviously, the more materialistic we are, if we are unbelievers, then I don't know how people can even register death on their radars, Death is something that's not talked about, as we said before. It's not seen as part of life. It's seen as something that you just do not discuss. It's a taboo. And in order to evade thoughts of death, one has to self anesthetize, either through drink or drugs or entertainment or some other kind of, diverting factors so that we can escape the thought of death. The thought of death must be terrifying to someone with no belief. Even for believers, the thought of death is often very, very frightening because mostly we are thinking of, our missed opportunities, our sins, and things like that. But for someone to believe that death is annihilation and eternal nothingness, that must be the most terrifying thought ever. I'm not sure whether actually anyone really does believe that, because it would be insupportable, How would you tolerate that burden, that terrifying burden of knowing that you are going to go to eternal annihilation or eternal alienation?
Yeah, indeed, good points. I guess at the end of the day, in that sense, belief is the source of all happiness. It also makes something like death into pure happiness and pure purposefulness, I imagine. There is a comment from one of our readers. I'll read through it, and I guess it is something that was discussed, but they wanted to also make a point out of it, and I'll read through it so that we can also put in our reflections, and then after that, inshallah, we'll only have a few minutes left. So that is, it comes and it says, plants also have a life. If moderate killing of animals is execution, it is also same for the plants. Plants also have a life that should be protected. Moreover, all have a limited lifetime. So I guess contemplating over all our mortality and look for the eternal source is the only evacuation door of the dilemma. Otherwise, that precious love for the life falls into emptiness. I guess this probably talks to the transformation of the life in that sense. But would you like to reflect on this piece? I guess some of this may be maybe already discussed in some case, but like plants also having life. I guess it is a level of life. I guess it is mentioned. Maybe we can start a bit of that. Like the plant life is not really the same as animal life, and animal life isn't the same as human life, and but they are still lives and valuable. And that transformation, like, is there like a is there like a grade or a degree, or like how should we understand that degrees? Maybe, it's not like how, in what sense do we tell this superior to this or that, or should we even do that? Brother Fatih, I mean, would you like to talk about, like, I don't know, like, is it like the different level of life, and like how can we understand like plants, like it's not literally conscious, like, these concepts of like the hayat, the issue, right? Like the having of life, but having of conscience. Is that the difference? How should we understand the plant life and that? Maybe we can do a quick comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, animals have more capabilities than plants in terms of like making kind of decisions, understanding stuff. And human beings are a level higher than animals in terms of having intellect and understanding and making choices. So there's certainly a difference that we observe, but it doesn't mean that they are not doing their duties as showing or making read the attributes of Allah on their own actions in their own capabilities. So it doesn't mean that they have less value or more value, but like there are certainly levels.
I see. Yeah, I remember that piece about like in the Risale about like do not see yourself as higher than other things, because you're equal, because you're all created. Is that a way to understand that? Maybe that we are all created by the same creator.
And I mean, like one place Nursi mentions that plants show names and attributes of Allah in a more, in quotation, pure way, because they don't have any capability of choosing something. I mean, animals have that. Animals can choose to kill another animal or eat already a dead animal. So animals have a little bit of choice, but plants, they are more pure
Mirrors, maybe.
Yeah, mirrors to Allah's attributes. I mean,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah.
Animals
Yeah,
have more variety, but like sometimes they hide some stuff because of their choice. And human beings, they can be a mirror or just something black as coal and reflect nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is indeed like probably something that is worthy of another discussion, how to understand the concept of life, and also how each level of life is actually manifesting the names of Allah. And yeah, as you said, that's also a great example, like plants being so, and I guess as Kolma just said about the Ustad Nursi giving example of plants and trees a lot is probably about that, is that they are I guess a more pure mirror of the manifestations of the names of Allah. Indeed. Any comments from you, Kulnajam? I know we kind of digress a little bit, but we are also close to our ending time. Any comments about that?
Not really, although I remember as a child being told not to pick flowers because I don't know, there wasn't a reason given, but I think, flowers also have the right to reach their potential fully. And if you pick it, then you sever it from the soil in a sense. And I think picking flowers selfishly to, admire them for yourself in a vase, it's okay. I mean, it's not haram, but in a sense, you are uprooting them from the soil of the divine names, and they die more quickly. Instead of being allowed to reach their Nuqta Kamal, their point of perfection in the earth. But no one is going to be punished for occasionally picking flowers and putting them on a table so that the table looks nice.
And probably it comes down to the intention too, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Right, we're about done in terms of time, I guess. I don't see any more questions from the audience. In any final comments, maybe we can start from you, Kulnajam, and then.
No, nothing to say. Thank you
Okay.
for another very good session.
Great. Thank you. This was a pretty good session. Again, probably very relevant to the times that we are living in as well. If Fatab, any final remarks from you? Otherwise, we can maybe get a dua from you.
No, thank you. I mean,
Would you like to make a dua for us then, inshallah?
yeah, may Allah understand these and then have us a good life and death. آمين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.
Thank you all. Again, this is the last session of 2020. So inshallah next year we will come back, and any suggestions, feel free to let us know. You can email us at info@lh4h.org. You can reach us through also our social media channels. But please let us know of any of your suggestions about topics, or any questions, or any type of format changes that you would like to see for continuous improvement of our, inshallah, effectiveness of these sessions.
And thanks to
Jazakallah
everyone
khair.
behind the scenes for everything, to all the moderators and to all the speakers who
Thank
have
you.
been on this year and has made the whole journey a very interesting one.
Yeah, and thank you for perseverance week after week, Kulnajam, about this.
It's an honor,
Thank you.
really. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu
Assalamu
alaikum.
alaikum.